Okay, so I wear my glasses today because I wanted to talk a little bit about how I plotted Kingdoms of Yah from start to finish, just to give you guys an idea of how I actually plan and plot and write my books. Before I begin, I kind of just want to preface this and say that my original intention actually was to show you guys how I plotted a book from start to finish using a different book, and I will be putting up that YouTube video. But unfortunately, I still am not sure how I would want to structure that book. So until I get an idea of how I would structure that book, I am putting that YouTube video on hold for a short time. My name is Nikki and this is the Pink Ravyn Writes. This is my writing YouTube channel. It's actually called the Pink Ravyn, but I like to call it the Pink Ravyn Writes because I have another YouTube channel that's called the Ravyn Speaks, where I talk a lot about, just stuff that I really like. I go a lot into spiritual stuff, like my background, and also talk a lot about Black issues. But on this YouTube channel, I like to talk about my writing process, books I've read, and just giving and sharing tips on how I write my books. Okay, so let's dive right in. By the way, in the background, you could see right here my book, The Bloodlust Power, which I started writing probably in 2017, or I think it's either 2017 or 2018, I'm not sure, but I started writing it a long time ago, and I finally got to publish it during COVID. Actually, when COVID hit, that was 2020. It was a summer. I had nothing to do, so I published the book. Let me just take off my glasses because I think that they have a weird glare. So I published the book. Let me actually take it up to show you guys. So this is it. Yeah. So this is it. I published it in 2020, attempting to have something to do with my life while COVID was happening. Since then, I had to redraft. Well, not redraft, but relaunch it because the original cover, which I'll be putting on the screen, the original cover that I published it with, I did not like it. To me, okay, well, let me put it this way. I liked it, but unfortunately, it wasn't the kind of cover that I thought would have represented the book. So I published it with a new cover, which is the cover you're seeing right now. And basically, the hope was that the new cover would would get more readers to buy it, more readers to be interested. And I think with the new cover, I saw more response in terms of more interaction with the book. And since then, I've been trying to build up my portfolio. Well, not my portfolio. I've been trying to build up my brand, build up my following. Still a bit struggling with that, and that's kind of why I did the YouTube channel, to see if I could perhaps gain more of, a community that likes reading, especially fantasy series. So back with the glasses again, because I have to read the screen in front of me. So the Kingdoms of Yah, how I came up with it was basically I was in college, well, in university, and I was looking for, a title for my book, which is The Bloodlust Power, which I have right up there. But actually, when I was brainstorming the title, I was actually brainstorming the title for the purposes of a fashion portfolio that I did. I would show a few of the things that I was doing in school. The fashion portfolio that I was actually attempting to do was basically me trying to tell the story through illustration and clues. But I was looking for a name that would basically represent the entire series, and so I came up with Kingdoms of Yah. And Kingdoms of Yah, I pulled it from a mixture of a few things. I pulled it from the fact that the entire series was about, I guess, the not the downfall, but the progression of how the kingdoms, or the, it wasn't kingdoms, but how the dimension, the world would have been breaking apart. So basically, the bloodlust power starts out with a rebellion, or I don't want to give too much away, but it basically is a rebellion that happened in the bloodlust power that triggers a series of events. So that's what the Kingdom of Yah was capturing, the rebellion, and how they were rebelling against the government. So I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm thirsty. So I'm going to read what I have here on the screen, which says, the series is about a disruption within Zion that eventually leads to a rebellion that puts the kingdoms in Zion at odds with each other. So the name of the world is called Zion, and it's omniverse, not a multiverse. It's an omniverse because how it's set up is that it views our universe, or Earth's universe, as a part of it, or as a part of the main omniverse, and Earth's universe is considered like a jurisdiction, or a king, not a kingdom, but a regency within one of the kingdoms that makes up Zion. So Zion is separated in two parts. There's the upper part called Ariwa Ite, and the lower part called Itoba. And Ariwa Ite and Itoba used to be two converged realms, and together it's known as Zion, but after several wars it's split in two, with Ariwa Ite kind of closing off its borders from Itoba. But they sort of maintained trade, and Ariwa Ite's government is still, in a sense, in charge of Itoba. In the Kingdoms of Yah, Itoba is considering themselves to be a part of Ariwa Ite. I wanted to kind of go ahead and show you guys how I planned the first book and how I am attempting to plan this book that I'm currently working on, which is the fourth book in the series. Now, I already published two books. Book 1 and book 2 is on Amazon. Book 3, I'm still in the revision process. I want to get AIC readers, but I don't know how long that would take or how I would go about getting that done. Right now, I've been constantly revising it, and in actuality, that book was the third book that's now the third book in this series, was actually the first book that I wrote. I wrote that before I wrote this, and I wrote the second book. And it was actually following one of the ehals, or the ehals. Kind of doesn't matter how you pronounce it. I pronounce it ehals. It was following one of the ehals known as Ismail, that's his name, who kind of gets dragged into the political mess after he almost gets kicked out of the Divine Palace for sleeping around. So that's his backstory. So in order to kind of, like, I guess, redeem himself, he joins the military, even though he's not like a military type person. He's not a warrior or anything. He's an artist, actually. He joins the military in a sense to redeem himself from all the past things he got in trouble with. So that's the book that I'm currently working on, and most of the book is taken from his perspective as he tries to fix all the problems he caused while being the chief in command of the military. And the reason why he well, not chief in command, commander in chief. Anyway, the reason why he ends up being the commander in chief of the military is because his father is one of the divine ones, so one of the members of the divine throne. So the divine throne is the overarching government of both Ariwaite and Itoba, or Zion. So I'll just call the entire multiverse or omniverse Zion for now. So the thing about it is that the divine throne is made up of three Elohim. So it's made up of three Elohim. All of them work together and they have a whole backstory. And I like to consider them the actual protagonists or main characters of the book, even though most of the story is told through the perspective of different angels and different deities or ehals. So in this third book, you get to know a little bit more about Ishmael and his backstory. And he is the son of one of the members of the throne. And so he has a lot of pressure. He has a lot to live up to. He has a lot of things that's on his back. And being the son of one of the members of the divine throne means that a lot of the angels, ehels, and other celestial beings that's living in Zion kind of have like really high expectation of him. Where to begin? Alright, so I've explained the backstory of Kingdoms of Yah, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the ways I outlined the book. Well, not outlined, but structure the book and how I structure the entire series. So believe it or not, I pantsed through all three books, and while a lot of people might not like pantsing, that's kind of my writing style. And what happened here was, because it's a series, I ended up having to do a lot more planning than I thought would have initially did. And that led me to trying to research some outlining methods that would work for me. And unfortunately, none of them worked. I had to put my glasses back on again. Yeah, as I was saying, none of them worked. And what I had initially started off doing was watching a bunch of YouTube videos to see who in the AuthorTube community pantsed and could help me with my pantsing, but everybody is a plotter, especially when it comes to writing a series. So I think that led me to creating a YouTube video to show you guys how I work through it and how I'm continuing to work through that process. And the first way I started off with plotting or outlining was Save the Cat's outlining method, which a lot of YouTubers recommended. And so I rushed to buy the book. It was an ebook. I didn't buy a hard copy at the time. And then I read through it, and it started off with some very good tips. Let's see. It started off with I actually can't remember how it started off, but it started off good. I think I learned a lot. It went into the beats though, and it went into two things. It did three act, overview of the three act structure and beats, and it was using like a lot of examples from different books on how they use the beats, but I found that it was not helpful. And that's kind of weird to come on YouTube and say that Save the Cat's Write a Novel was not helpful, but it wasn't. It actually kind of made me a little bit more confused. Then I started researching more YouTubers. I ran into a ton of YouTubers that was very helpful for me. Half Breathings was one of the YouTubers that introduced me to the series Bible, which I realized I had definitely needed. So I kind of took some of her advice and incorporated it into my own. And then there was a few others that, helped along the way. What happened was that I ended up doing something called the zero draft method. I can't remember if I heard the term on YouTube or I read about it or I made it up in my head, but I went with the zero draft method of outlining. And basically what the zero draft method of outlining is that you would write the entire book, and as you're writing the entire book, you don't really think about, stuff like what happens next. It's kind of basically pantsing. But after you do that initial draft, then you rewrite the book. And rewriting the book now, you're thinking of actually outlining it. So what I would do is write the book first. And that's what I found with both the first books I did, the first two books. I wrote the book first using the zero draft method. And then I switched over to outlining it in terms of using like a grid outline structure. I would try to summarize what happens in every single chapter. The thing about it is the first two books I didn't quite do that, so I had to end up rewriting the first two books all over. Actually, I had published The Bloodlust Power, and then while I was writing the second book, I had completely written the second book, and I was getting ready to publish it. I realized that the first book and the second book are not coming together. Like, the first book is its own book, and the second book has absolutely nothing to do with the first book. So I had to pull the first book down and rewrite the entire first book so that the first and the second actually flowed. And what I did in that time was actually try to outline or try to jot down what happens in every single scene. And when I was writing my third book, so as I was saying, the third book is what I wrote first. So I ended up writing that third book, putting it away for a really, really long time, and then saying to myself that I need to finish the story, in a sense, finish or, come to full circle with continuing what happened in the second book, because there's a huge cliffhanger in the second book, so I had to pick it up. And then I pulled that book that I wrote like a really long time ago and said I'll refurbish it to use it as the third book because it was in the same series. So when I took the third book, I actually tried to refurbish it using Microsoft Word. And then when I realized that that was not working because I couldn't see anything that was going on in each of the chapters or each of the scenes, I was trying to look for different writing programs that would help me track what was going on. And that's when I ran into Scrivener. And so I transferred the entire book to Scrivener, rewrote the entire book, and I basically, well, Scrivener has this feature where you could write like a synopsis of what happens in each scene. And so I had to do that. And when I went through it, it was very easy. The process helped me, push me along. I transferred it back to Word, and then I basically did start doing my draft edits. So I don't want to stay too long, like just talking about the Kingdoms of Yah. What I want to do is for the upcoming YouTube videos, I want to show you basically exactly how I started writing, how I outlined. I want to show you the progression of all the covers that I did for the first two books, and then kind of give you a little look into how the creative process of recreating the book covers and what each book cover means. I just wanted to go straight into that because it's going to take a while. I'm currently writing the fourth book, and I wanted to also show a little bit about how I wanted to show a little bit about how I write that, how I outline that, and just do some writing vlogs. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put the intro of my other YouTube video that I was actually planning to do, just to give you guys an idea of how I, put together or plan creating a book cover. And I'll do that later down in the series when I get to creating a book cover. For the rest of this particular series, I'll just be focusing on the writing vlog, basically the writing journey. So I'll be blogging, vlogging my writing, how much word count, how much words I've hit for the day. And I think I also have a video on my word count tracker, but I did that for my other YouTube series that I was planning to do. So I'm going to also put that up, so you'll notice me making reference to the other series. I'm kind of just putting it up so that you could see a few things, so I don't have to refilm that again. Alright, so this was long enough as it was, so I'll end here, and I'll do a part 2 to this, so you'll see me in the same shirt. Reason why I'm going to do a part 2 is because I wanted to talk about 2 more additional things in terms of anyone who wants to start out writing their book. So for this YouTube video, I'll close it, I'll give you my final goodbyes, and hopefully I'll see you again in part 2.